I am Rebecca Harrington, 32 years old, and until last month, I was just another neurologist doing research that only 12 people in the world cared about. Then, my pediatric treatment protocol started working miracles, and suddenly I was invited to speak at the $5 million Children's Hospital Charity Gala. I should have been ecstatic, but my family had other ideas. They have always seen me as the brilliant but socially inept daughter, and they were certain I would embarrass myself. Before I continue my story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit like and subscribe if you have ever had someone try to steal your moment to shine. Growing up as a Harrington meant expectations were always sky high. Our family had produced 4 generations of doctors, each more accomplished and socially connected than the last. My parents, Eleanor and Howard Harrington, were prestigious neurosurgeons, with a guest list that included senators and hospital board directors. They hosted dinner parties where medical breakthroughs were discussed over perfectly paired wines, and everyone always looked impossibly polished. Then there was me. From an early age, I was labeled as the smart but awkward daughter. I would rather read medical journals than learn the proper way to make small talk. While I could recite the entire neurological pathway by age 12, I stumbled over basic introductions at my parents' cocktail parties. My mother would sigh and say, "Rebecca has a brilliant mind, but absolutely no social graces." In stark contrast stood my sister Amanda. 3 years younger, but infinitely more poised, Amanda had the uncanny ability to charm anyone within 5 minutes of meeting them. She could make the grumpiest hospital benefactor laugh and open their checkbook by dessert. While I hid in corners at functions, Amanda worked the room like she was born for it. My parents beamed with pride watching her effortlessly navigate social waters that always felt turbulent and treacherous to me. "Amanda is carrying on the true Harrington legacy," my father would boast. The combination of medical excellence and social influence. The unspoken comparison hung in the air like a diagnosis. No one wanted to say out loud, Rebecca had only managed half of the family equation. Despite the constant comparison, I threw myself into my studies. If I could not be the social butterfly my sister was, I would become the most brilliant researcher in my field. I graduated top of my class from medical school, earned my neurology specialization, and secured a position at Boston Children's Research Hospital, where I focused on pediatric neurological disorders. For the past 4 years, I had been developing a new treatment protocol for children with a rare form of neurological impairment. It was painstaking work, with countless late nights and failed attempts. But 6 months ago, we had our breakthrough. The treatment started showing remarkable results, with 80% of trial patients showing significant improvement. Children who had been given grim prognoses were suddenly thriving. The medical community took notice. My research was published in top journals, and colleagues began implementing my protocol nationwide. I was proud of my work, but remained comfortably behind the scenes, letting the data speak for itself. I was never the Harrington who sought the spotlight. Then came the invitation. The prestigious Children's Hospital Charity Gala, an annual event that raised upwards of $5 million for pediatric research, wanted me as their featured speaker. Not my famous parents, not my charismatic sister, me. The invitation specifically requested that I present my groundbreaking research to the 400 attendees, including the wealthiest donors and most influential medical directors in the country. When I received the embossed envelope, I nearly dropped it. My hands trembled as I read the formal request from Catherine Lancaster, the Gala chairwoman, expressing how impressed the committee was with my work and how they believed my presentation would inspire substantial donations. For once, I would be the Harrington in the spotlight. The thought terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. Though public speaking ranked somewhere between root canal and skydiving without a parachute on my list of fears, I felt a surge of determination. Perhaps this was my chance to prove to my family that I was more than just the awkward, brilliant daughter who should be kept in the lab. I accepted the invitation and immediately began preparing. I spent weeks refining my presentation, making complex neurological concepts accessible without diluting their importance. I practiced in front of my bathroom mirror, then in front of my mentor, Dr. Audrey Matthews, who had supported my research from the beginning. "You are going to be magnificent, Rebecca," Audrey told me after my third run-through. "Your passion for these children shines through every word. That authenticity is worth more than any polished social skill." I even ventured into territory that had always been Amanda territory, shopping for the perfect gown. I found a beautiful emerald green dress that made me feel confident and professional. As I stood in the fitting room, I allowed myself to imagine standing at the podium, representing my own work, making my family proud on my own terms. The Sunday before the gala, I drove to my parents' suburban mansion for our monthly family dinner, invitation in hand, heart full of hope that perhaps this achievement would finally bridge the gap between the daughter I was and the daughter they had always wanted me to be. The Harrington family dinner had been a monthly tradition since I moved out after medical school. Every third Sunday, we gathered around my mother's lavish dining table to discuss accomplishments and upcoming events. These dinners typically followed a predictable pattern. My parents would discuss their latest medical conference keynote. Amanda would share stories about charming some influential person, and I would briefly mention my research before the conversation moved on to more interesting topics. This Sunday felt different. For once, I had news that would surely impress even my achievement-oriented family. I had dressed more carefully than usual, wearing a blue blouse that Amanda once said almost made me look put together. I clutched the formal invitation in my purse like a talisman. "Rebecca, you are positively glowing tonight," my mother remarked as she served her famous coq au vin. "Did something happen with that research project of yours?" The opening was perfect. I took a deep breath and placed the invitation on the table. "Actually, yes. The Children's Hospital Charity Gala has invited me to be their featured speaker this year. They want me to present my treatment protocol to all the major donors." A moment of silence fell across the dining room. Then my father reached for the invitation, adjusting his glasses as he read. "Well, this is certainly unexpected," he said, his tone carefully neutral. My mother smiled tightly. "How lovely, dear. The Lancaster Committee does excellent work." Amanda examined her perfectly manicured nails before looking up. "Congrats, Becca. That gala is like the social event of the season for the medical community. Who would have thought they would pick you?" There it was, the backhanded compliment that characterized so many of our interactions, but I was determined not to let it diminish my excitement. "Catherine Lancaster personally signed the invitation," I continued. "She said my work could inspire millions in donations for pediatric research." My parents exchanged a quick glance that I had seen many times before, their silent communication that spoke volumes. It was the look they gave each other when they were concerned but trying not to show it. "Speaking to 400 people is quite different from presenting at a medical conference," my mother said delicately, placing her fork down. "The gala attracts a different crowd. They need to be entertained as well as informed." My father cleared his throat. "Rebecca, we are proud of your research achievements, but these high society functions require a certain finesse. Perhaps you should consider having someone help you prepare your presentation." The bubble of excitement I had carried into dinner began to deflate. "I have already started working on my speech. Dr. Matthews has been helping me refine it." "Audrey Matthews is a brilliant researcher," my mother conceded, "but she hardly moves in the social circles that will be present at the gala." Amanda reached across the table to pat my hand in a gesture that appeared supportive but felt patronizing. "Becca, remember the symposium last year? When you knocked over the water pitcher during your presentation?" My cheeks burned at the memory. That was different. I was caught off guard by an unexpected question. "And the hospital fundraiser where you got so nervous you called Chief of Surgery Wilson by the wrong name 3 times?" my father added, not unkindly but firmly. "I was 26 then. I have given numerous presentations since," I protested, but my voice had lost its confident edge. The conversation shifted subtly but unmistakably. What had begun as my exciting announcement had transformed into a family intervention about my social shortcomings. My mother suggested I needed extensive coaching on everything from my speech to my posture. My father recommended I keep my presentation under 5 minutes to minimize potential issues. And Amanda, with her perfect smile, offered to help me prepare. "I know all the major donors who will be attending," she said. "I could coach you on what each of them responds to. We would not want you to embarrass yourself." There it was, the fear voiced aloud. My family was not proud of my achievement. They were worried I would embarrass them. The remainder of dinner passed in a blur as I nodded and pretended to accept their suggestions, while the joy of my accomplishment withered under their doubt. I drove home that night with tears threatening to spill. My apartment, usually my sanctuary filled with medical books and research papers, felt empty. I tried to recapture the confidence I had felt when receiving the invitation, but my family voices echoed in my head, undermining my belief in myself. The following week brought an escalating series of helpful interventions from my family. My mother called daily with suggestions about everything from my hairstyle to the cadence of my speech. My father emailed articles about effective public speaking with certain passages highlighted, all emphasizing the dangers of appearing too academic or technical. Amanda was perhaps the most persistent. She texted constantly, offering to take me shopping for a more suitable gown, suggesting my choice would not impress the right people. She sent links to makeup artists and speech coaches, all with the same underlying message: I was not ready for this spotlight. On Wednesday, I discovered something that turned my disappointment to dread. While visiting my parents' home to drop off some medical journals my father had requested, I overheard my mother on the phone in her study. "Yes, Sophia, we are handling the situation," she was saying to one of her socialite friends. "The Lancaster committee really should have consulted us before extending the invitation. Rebecca is brilliant with her research, but putting her in front of the gala attendees would be setting her up for failure. We have connections with most of the major donors, and we cannot risk." She paused, noticing me standing in the doorway, and quickly ended the call. The look on my face must have revealed that I had heard enough, because she immediately launched into an explanation about how they were simply trying to support me. That evening, I received an email notification that made my blood run cold. My mother had set up meetings with 3 major hospital donors to discuss my research before the gala. The email thread revealed she had invited Amanda to these meetings as well, describing her as an essential part of presenting Rebecca work effectively. My suspicions were confirmed the next morning when I called Catherine Lancaster to confirm some details about the presentation format. She mentioned, somewhat confused, that my mother had contacted the committee, suggesting I might need substantial support for my presentation, and had proposed several modifications to the program. Driving home from the hospital that night, I was caught between anger and devastation when my phone pinged with a social media notification. Amanda had posted a photo of herself with the caption, "So excited to help prepare my brilliant but shy sister for her big gala speech." The Harrington sisters taking on pediatric research together. We were not taking on anything together. This was my research, my invitation, my moment. Yet somehow, my family was rewriting the narrative to include themselves, particularly Amanda, as the socially capable handler of their awkward daughter. The final blow came when I overheard my mother on another phone call, this time to Catherine Lancaster herself. I had stopped by their house again to pick up some old research notes, and from the hallway, I clearly heard the words that confirmed my worst fears. "We have figured out a solution to the Rebecca problem." My own mother was referring to me, her daughter, as a problem that needed solving. Whatever last hope I had that my family truly believed in me vanished in that moment. I stood frozen in the hallway, my mother's words echoing in my ears. The Rebecca problem. As if I were a complication to be managed, rather than a daughter to be supported. When she emerged from her study and saw me standing there, her expression shifted from surprise to a practiced smile. "Rebecca, darling, I did not hear you come in. What exactly is the Rebecca problem?" I asked. my voice surprisingly steady, despite the storm brewing inside me. My mother sighed, placing a manicured hand on my arm. You overheard that out of context, dear. We are simply concerned about you being comfortable at such a high-pressure event. Comfortable? Or are you worried I will embarrass the Harrington name? Rebecca, you know how you get in social situations. You freeze up, you stumble over words. Your research is brilliant, but presentation matters in these circles. We are trying to protect you. I do not need protection, I said. I need my family to believe in me. My mother's expression softened into something that looked like pity. We do believe in your intelligence, but we also know your limitations, which is why we think it would be best if Amanda accompanied you on stage, just to smooth things over if needed. The casual way she suggested hijacking my presentation made my stomach twist. That is not happening. This is my invitation, my research. We have already discussed it with the committee, she replied, her tone making it clear this was not up for debate. They understand our concerns. That evening, my father called a family meeting. I arrived at their home to find Amanda already there, looking sympathetic, but with an undercurrent of satisfaction that made my skin crawl. Rebecca, my father began once we were seated in his study. We have given this considerable thought. Your research deserves recognition, and the gala is an important opportunity. But we have to be practical about the presentation. Practical meaning what? I challenged. Meaning that Amanda will accompany you to provide support. You will begin the presentation and explain the technical aspects of your research, and then Amanda will help translate the impact to donors in more accessible language. The implication that I could not communicate my own work effectively felt like a slap. I have been preparing for this presentation for weeks. I do not need a translator. Amanda leaned forward. Becca, no one is saying you are not capable. But these people respond to a certain approach. I know how to speak their language. It is not about the language, I retorted. It is about you and our parents not believing I can do this on my own. My mother made a dismissive gesture. This is not about belief, Rebecca. This is about being practical. The Gala raises millions for pediatric research. We cannot risk that funding because of personal pride. Personal pride. As if standing up for myself was merely vanity rather than self-respect. I left the meeting feeling steamrolled, but still determined to present my own work. That determination wavered the next day, when a colleague forwarded me an email chain between my mother and the Gala committee. My parents had framed their concerns as medical ones, suggesting that my social anxiety might make the presentation challenging for everyone involved. They had proposed Amanda as a support presenter who could ensure the donors fully appreciated the importance of the research. The manipulation was so thorough it left me breathless. They had found a way to make their interference seem like concern rather than control. That evening, Amanda posted on social media, again, helping my brilliant sister prepare for her big speech, so proud of all her hard work and happy to support her shy nature with some social butterfly skills. The comments were flooded with praise for her selflessness and support. No one seemed to question why a neurologist would need her non-neurologist sister to present her own research. 2 days later, I discovered Amanda had purchased a gown nearly identical to the emerald green one I had chosen. When I confronted her about it, she seemed genuinely confused by my anger. I thought it would be cute for us to match. The Harrington sisters, united for children health. It makes for a better visual story. There is no us in this presentation, I said. This is my research, my invitation. Of course it is your research, she replied soothingly. I am just helping you shine. You know these society events stress you out. Every interaction with my family left me feeling smaller, less confident in my abilities. Their doubt had begun to seep into my own thoughts, making me question whether I could actually handle the presentation alone. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps I would freeze up, stumble over my words, embarrass myself. In desperation, I called my mentor, Dr. Audrey Matthews. We met for coffee at a small cafe, far from the hospital where my family had connections. Your family is wrong, Audrey said firmly after I had explained the situation. I have watched you present your research dozens of times. Yes, you get nervous, but your passion and expertise always shine through. That authenticity is far more powerful than any polished performance. But what if they are right? What if I embarrass myself? So what if you do? Audrey challenged. You stumble, you recover, you continue. The work speaks for itself, Rebecca, and you are the only one who truly understands every aspect of it. Her confidence in me was like oxygen when I had been drowning in doubt. I left our meeting with renewed determination to stand my ground. That resolve was tested again when I received a call from Catherine Lancaster, the Gala chairwoman. Dr. Harrington, she began formally. I wanted to touch base about the presentation format. I have received some conflicting information from your family. I took a deep breath. What kind of conflicting information? Your mother has suggested you might prefer to have your sister co-present. But the invitation was extended specifically to you, based on your groundbreaking research. I want to present alone, I said clearly. This is my work, and I am fully capable of communicating it. There was a pause, and then Catherine said, That was my understanding as well. Thank you for clarifying. The call boosted my confidence, but the relief was short-lived. Later that day, I received the digital proof of the Gala program from the committee. To my horror, it listed the presentation as Breakthrough in Pediatric Neurology Treatment by Dr. Rebecca Harrington, presented by Amanda Harrington. I immediately called Catherine, who sounded equally confused and promised to look into it. An hour later, she called back, clearly uncomfortable. It seems there was a miscommunication with the program designer, she explained. Your mother provided some alternative text after the final approval deadline. I assure you, it will be corrected for the printed version. The manipulation had reached new levels. My family was not just undermining my confidence. They were actively working to replace me as the presenter of my own research. That night, I broke down in my apartment, surrounded by my research notes and presentation drafts. Years of being the awkward daughter, the brilliant but socially inept Harrington, came crashing down on me. Maybe I should just withdraw from the presentation altogether. Let Amanda have her moment in the spotlight she so desperately craved. My phone rang, interrupting my spiral of self-doubt. It was Daniel, a colleague from the research team who had worked closely with me on the treatment protocol. Rebecca? Are you okay? You seemed upset when you left the lab today. I found myself pouring out the whole story to him, all the manipulation and doubt my family had heaped upon me. That is absolutely ridiculous, Daniel said when I finished. I have seen you present our research to the most intimidating medical panels. Yes, you get nervous, but you know this protocol better than anyone on the planet. No one else should be presenting it. His words were like a lifeline. In the midst of my family undermining, I had forgotten that others saw me differently, believed in my capabilities. Our conversation was interrupted by another social media notification. Amanda had posted a new photo, this time in the emerald green gown that matched mine exactly. The caption read, Proud to support my shy sister at her gala debut. Cannot wait to help present her amazing work. The post had hundreds of likes and supportive comments, painting Amanda as the selfless sister helping her socially awkward sibling. The narrative was complete, the stage set for her to swoop in and save the day from the Rebecca problem. I stared at the post, a mix of hurt and anger coursing through me. This was no longer just about a presentation. This was about years of being diminished, of having my achievements overshadowed, of being seen as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be respected. The gala was 3 days away. My family had manipulated, undermined, and rewritten the narrative, but they had underestimated one thing. The quiet Harrington daughter had finally had enough. The day of the gala arrived with a perfect spring evening, the kind that would typically be described as a good omen. I stood in my apartment, staring at my reflection in the emerald green gown that now felt tainted by Amanda duplicate. Despite the knot in my stomach, I was determined to attend and present my research as invited. This was my work, my accomplishment, and I would not be erased from it, no matter how much my family tried to push me into the background. I arrived at the Grand Plaza Hotel, 30 minutes before the event was scheduled to begin. The ballroom had been transformed into an elegant wonderland, with crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over tables adorned with white orchids and emerald accents. A large screen behind the podium displayed the Children's Hospital logo, alongside images of smiling children who had benefited from advanced treatments, including several from my own protocol trials. My momentary appreciation of the beautiful setting evaporated when I spotted Amanda, across the room, already working the crowd in her identical emerald gown. She was chatting animatedly with a group that included several major hospital donors, gesturing in a way that suggested she was explaining something complex, making it accessible with her trademark charm. My stomach dropped when I realized she was standing next to my research poster, pointing to specific data points as if they were her own. Before I could approach, my parents materialized beside me. My mother looked stunning in a silver gown that complemented her perfectly coiffed gray hair, while my father cut an imposing figure in his tuxedo. "Rebecca, there you are," my mother said, her voice low. "We were beginning to worry you would be late." The invitation said 7 o'clock. "It is 6:30, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "In these circles, early is on time," my father said. "Amanda has already spoken with the Wilsons and the Blackwells. They are very interested in the research." "My research," I emphasized, "which I will be presenting shortly." My parents exchanged that familiar glance, the one that communicated volumes without words. "About that," my mother began delicately. "We have been speaking with Catherine, and we all agree that the presentation would be most effective as a joint effort. You can handle the technical aspects, and then Amanda can help translate the impact for the donors." "Catherine agreed to this?" I asked, disbelief evident in my voice. "She understands the importance of maximizing donations," my father replied smoothly. "This is about the children, Rebecca, not about individual recognition." The manipulation was so practiced it almost sounded reasonable. Of course this was about the children. Of course fundraising was the priority. But beneath those truths lay the unspoken belief that I was not capable of inspiring those donations on my own. As more guests arrived, I found myself being introduced by my parents as our brilliant researcher daughter, while Amanda was presented as our daughter, who will be helping present the groundbreaking treatment tonight. The subtle distinction spoke volumes about their expectations. The most painful interactions were with the guests themselves. Many approached me with confusion, evident in their expressions. "So you are the doctor behind the research?" one elderly donor asked, glancing between Amanda and me in our identical gowns. "Your sister was just explaining it to us. She seems to understand it so well." "Yes, I am the neurologist who developed the treatment protocol," I confirmed, trying not to let my frustration show. "How wonderful that your sister can help you present it," the woman replied with a kindly pat on my arm. "Public speaking can be so challenging for some people." With each similar interaction, I felt myself being erased from my own achievement, reduced to the awkward sister who needed managing. Amanda played her role perfectly, publicly praising my brilliant sister while subtly undermining my presence. When donors asked me technical questions, she would often interject with, "What Rebecca is trying to explain island," before I had even struggled to answer. An hour into the event, as guests were taking their seats for dinner, my father pulled me aside. "Rebecca, I think it might be best if you let Amanda take the lead on the presentation." "What? That is not what we agreed to, and it is certainly not what the invitation specified. The committee is concerned about maximizing donor engagement," he explained in his physician voice, the one he used to deliver difficult news to patients. "Your practice run yesterday was concerning." "What practice run?" "I did not do any practice run with the committee." My father looked momentarily uncomfortable. "Your mother shared the video of you practicing your speech at home." The violation hit me like a physical blow. My mother had recorded me practicing in what I thought was the privacy of their home when I had stopped by to pick up some notes. She had done so without my knowledge, and then shared it with the committee to prove I was not up to the task. "You might be more comfortable watching from backstage," my father suggested. "Amanda has memorized your talking points. She will credit you fully, of course." I was saved from responding by the arrival of Catherine Lancaster, the Gala chairwoman, a formidable woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She approached our little group with purpose. "Dr. Harrington, we have not had a chance to speak yet this evening. I was hoping to go over a few last details about your presentation." Before I could respond, my mother stepped smoothly into the conversation. "Catherine, we were just discussing the format. Given Rebecca's rather specialized knowledge, we think it might be best if Amanda handles the main presentation. Rebecca can address any technical questions afterward." Catherine's eyes narrowed slightly. "That is not the arrangement we discussed, Eleanor. The invitation was extended specifically to Dr. Rebecca Harrington, based on her groundbreaking research." "Yes, and we appreciate that," my mother replied smoothly. "But we all want what is best for the fundraising effort. Rebecca can be rather technical in her explanations." I stood there, being discussed as if I were not present, as if I were a child incapable of making my own decisions. The humiliation burned in my chest, threatening to bring tears to my eyes. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment to compose myself before I broke down in front of everyone. In the elegant bathroom, I stared at my reflection, barely recognizing the woman looking back at me. I had allowed my family to diminish me for so long that I had started to accept their narrative as truth. The confident researcher who had developed a treatment helping dozens of children had been reduced to an insecure shadow, questioning her own abilities. As I dabbed at my eyes, careful not to smudge my makeup, the bathroom door opened and Amanda entered. She paused when she saw me, then approached with that look of practiced concern. "Becca, are you okay? You seemed upset out there." "Am I okay?" I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping. "You are trying to take over my presentation, wearing an identical dress, pretending to understand research you had nothing to do with, and you are asking if I am okay?" Amanda had the grace to look momentarily ashamed, but it quickly passed. "I am trying to help you. You know these events make you anxious. Remember the Wilson fundraiser? You nearly passed out from nerves. That was 7 years ago. I have given dozens of presentations since then. To medical audiences," she countered. "This is different. These people do not want to hear about neural pathways and treatment protocols. They want to be inspired, to feel connected to the cause. And you think I cannot inspire people about my own research? Research I have dedicated 4 years of my life to?" Amanda sighed, checking her reflection in the mirror and adjusting a strand of her perfect hair. "Becca, this is not personal. We are just playing to our strengths. You are the brilliant researcher. I am the people person. Together, we make a complete Harrington." Her words struck at the core of my insecurity, the belief that had been reinforced my entire life. I was only half of what a Harrington should be. The smart half, but not the valuable half, when it came to the family legacy of influence and connection. I left the bathroom without responding, feeling more defeated than ever. In the hallway, I overheard my mother speaking to a group of her socialite friends. "Yes, Rebecca is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But between us, she is not really suited for these events. Too much time in the lab, you understand. Thank goodness Amanda can step in. She can make even the most complex research sound captivating." The casual dismissal of my abilities was the final straw. I slipped out to a small alcove off the main ballroom and called Audrey, my mentor. "They have completely taken over," I said when she answered, my voice breaking. "My own family is convincing everyone I am incapable of presenting my own research. Amanda is already pretending she understands it all." "Rebecca, listen to me." Audrey's voice was firm. "This is your work, your invitation. Do not let them take this from you. I do not know if I can stand up to them. Not here, not now." "Then I am coming," she said decisively. "I will be there in 20 minutes. Do not let them start that presentation without you. I ended the call and took a deep breath, trying to center myself. When I returned to the ballroom, I discovered to my horror that my presentation materials had been modified. The slides on the tablet ready for projection had been simplified, with technical details removed and Amanda name added to the title slide. Someone, likely my mother, had edited my careful work to make it more accessible and to include Amanda as a key presenter. The crushing weight of betrayal left me breathless. This was no longer about social anxiety or public speaking skills. This was a coordinated effort to diminish my achievement and insert Amanda into a spotlight that should have been mine alone. My entire life had been building to this pattern, but never had it been so blatant, so calculated. As the dinner service concluded, and Catherine Lancaster approached the podium for introductions, I felt a hollowness open up inside me. Years of allowing my family to define me, to categorize me as the brilliant but awkward daughter, had led to this moment of complete erasure. I had two choices: withdraw completely and let Amanda have the stage, or somehow find the strength to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The lights dimmed slightly as Catherine welcomed the guests and began to introduce the evening main presentation. I stood frozen at the edge of the ballroom, tears threatening to spill, as I watched my sister straighten her identical emerald gown and prepare to step into my spotlight. In that moment, I had never felt more alone or more heartbroken by the people who should have been my greatest supporters. As Catherine Lancaster began her introduction, I slipped into the restroom again, unable to watch as my achievement was about to be claimed by my sister. The elegant bathroom was empty this time, offering a moment of solitude as I tried to gather my shattered confidence. I splashed cool water on my wrists, a technique I had learned in medical school to calm nerves before exams, but it did little to ease the burning humiliation and betrayal. The bathroom door swung open, and I tensed, expecting Amanda or my mother coming to ensure I stayed out of the way. Instead, Catherine Lancaster herself entered, her sharp eyes finding mine in the mirror. "Dr. Harrington," she said, her tone direct, but not unkind. "I thought I might find you here." I straightened, trying to maintain what dignity I had left. "Mrs. Lancaster, I apologize for disappearing before the presentation." She moved closer, her expression serious. "Rebecca, may I speak candidly with you?" I nodded, unsure what to expect. "I have been watching the dynamics with your family all evening, and something does not add up." She crossed her arms, her elegant black gown shimmering under the bathroom lights. "I invited you to speak because I read your research paper in the New England Journal of Medicine. It was your clarity of thought, your innovative approach, and yes, your evident passion for these children that impressed the committee." My surprise must have shown on my face because she continued, "Your family seems to have created a narrative about you that I simply have not seen evidence of. The woman who wrote that paper is more than capable of presenting it. My family believes I will embarrass myself," I said quietly. "They always have." "And what do you believe?" she challenged. The question caught me off guard. What did I believe? For so long I had allowed my family perception to become my reality. But somewhere beneath the layers of doubt they had heaped upon me was the researcher who had persisted through failed trials and skepticism to create a treatment that was changing lives. "I believe in my research," I said finally. "I know this protocol better than anyone else in the world." Catherine nodded approvingly. "Then that is what matters tonight. Not your sister's ability to work a room or your parents' social connections. But they have already convinced half the donors that Amanda should present. They even modified my slides." Catherine's expression hardened. "Without authorization. The hospital board was unaware of this arrangement your family was attempting to create. This is your invitation, Dr. Harrington. Your achievement." She checked her elegant watch. "I need to return to the podium. But before I do, you should know that I will be introducing Dr. Rebecca Harrington to present her groundbreaking research. The only question is whether you will be walking onto that stage." With that, she turned to leave, but paused at the door. For what it is worth, I grew up with 3 brothers who were convinced I would never amount to anything in the medical field. Sometimes family is the last to recognize our true capabilities. As the door closed behind her, I took a deep breath. Catherine's words had cut through the fog of self-doubt my family had created. This was my invitation, my research, my moment. The bathroom door opened again, and this time Audrey rushed in, slightly breathless in a hastily donned evening dress. "Rebecca, I got here as fast as I could. What is happening?" I filled her in quickly on the conversation with Catherine, feeling a spark of determination growing where moments before there had been only despair. "She is right," Audrey said firmly. "Your family has constructed this narrative about you being socially incapable, but I have watched you present to the hospital board, to skeptical colleagues, to parents desperate for hope for their children. Yes, you get nervous, but your passion and knowledge always shine through. But what if they are right? What if I freeze up there?" "Then you take a breath and continue," Audrey said simply. "The work speaks for itself, Rebecca. These children are walking, talking, thriving, because of your protocol, not because of Amanda's social skills or your parents' connections." As we spoke, the door opened once more. Daniel, my research colleague, slipped in, looking slightly uncomfortable to be entering the women restroom, but determined nonetheless. "Sorry for the intrusion," he said, "but they are about to begin the presentations, and there is some confusion about who is speaking." "What kind of confusion?" I asked. "Your sister is at the podium, but Catherine Lancaster just announced that she wants to hear from Dr. Harrington alone. Your parents are trying to smooth things over, suggesting a joint presentation." Audrey took my shoulders in her hands, forcing me to meet her gaze. "Rebecca, this is your moment of decision. Are you going to let them continue defining who you are, or are you going to show them who you have become?" In that moment, something shifted inside me. All the years of diminishment, of being the awkward daughter, of having my achievements qualified by my perceived social limitations, crystallized into a single point of clarity. I did not need my family approval to be worthy of this moment. "I'm going out there," I said, my voice stronger than it had been all evening. Daniel grinned. "That is the Dr. Harrington I know." We exited the bathroom together, and I could immediately see the tension at the podium. Amanda stood there in our matching gown, looking frustrated as Catherine firmly held the microphone. My parents hovered nearby, my mother gesturing emphatically, while my father maintained a strained smile for the benefit of the watching donors. As I approached, Catherine spotted me, and a look of relief crossed her face. "Ah, here she is now. Ladies and gentlemen, the woman of the hour, Dr. Rebecca Harrington." My mother tried to intercept me, her hand gripping my arm. "Rebecca, we have discussed this. A joint presentation would be best for everyone." For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I removed her hand firmly from my arm and said, "No, Mother, that is not happening." The shock on her face was almost worth all the evening distress. Before she could recover, I continued my walk to the podium, aware of the hundreds of eyes following my progress. Amanda stood her ground, clearly expecting me to join her in the joint presentation my family had orchestrated. "Rebecca," she hissed as I reached her, "we agreed I would handle the donor-friendly portions." "No, Amanda," I replied calmly. "You and our parents agreed to that." "I did not." Catherine smoothly intervened. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have the privilege of hearing directly from the brilliant mind behind a revolutionary treatment protocol that is already changing lives at Children's Hospital. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rebecca Harrington." She handed me the microphone and whispered, "The stage is yours, Doctor. Your original slides are ready to go." Amanda had no choice but to step aside, her perfect smile faltering as she realized her plan was unraveling. My parents watched from the side of the stage, my mother looking appalled, my father unreadable. As I took my place at the podium, I saw Audrey and Daniel take seats near the front, their encouraging expressions like beacons in a sea of unfamiliar faces. Catherine returned to her seat at the head table, her slight nod giving me the final boost of confidence I needed. I looked out at the audience, feeling the familiar flutter of nerves but also a new sensation: ownership. This was my research, my passion, my moment. And for once, I would not let my family narrative about who I was supposed to be overshadow who I actually was. "Good evening," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "My name is Dr. Rebecca Harrington, and for the past 4 years, I have been developing a new treatment protocol for children with neurodevelopmental challenges. Tonight, I would like to tell you not just about the science, but about the children whose lives have been transformed." As I took that deep breath and launched into my presentation, I felt something inside me shift. The Rebecca my family had always seen, the awkward daughter who needed managing, began to fade away. In her place stood a woman claiming her own achievement, her own voice, her own moment in the spotlight. The first 30 seconds at the podium were the hardest. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain the microphone would pick it up, and my hands trembled slightly as I gestured toward the opening slide. But then something remarkable happened. As I began describing the neural pathways affected by the disorder my protocol addressed, I found my rhythm. This was the research I had lived and breathed for 4 years. These were the children whose progress I had monitored, whose parents I had consoled, and then celebrated with. This was my domain, and in it, I was not the awkward Harrington daughter, but Dr. Rebecca Harrington, neurologist and researcher. Traditional approaches focused on managing symptoms, I explained, clicking to a slide showing brain scans before treatment. But our protocol targets the underlying neural connections, stimulating growth in areas previously thought to be irreversibly damaged. I glanced up from my notes to gauge the audience reaction, expecting glazed expressions at the technical explanation. Instead, I found them leaning forward, engaged. A prominent donor in the front row nodded encouragingly. Emboldened, I continued, moving from the science to the stories. "Let me tell you about Mason, a 5-year-old who could not speak or make eye contact when he entered our trial. After 6 months on the protocol, I clicked to a video clip of a smiling boy reading aloud from a picture book, his mother wiping tears beside him. The audience audibly reacted, a collective intake of breath, followed by murmurs of appreciation. And Zoe, who at 7 had never taken independent steps. Another video played, showing a young girl walking slowly but steadily across a therapy room, her face alight with determination and joy. With each child's story, my confidence grew. I was not just reciting data, I was sharing transformation, hope, possibility. The technical aspects of my protocol were woven naturally into the narrative of each child's progress, making complex neurological concepts accessible without diluting their importance. From the corner of my eye, I could see my family reactions. Amanda stood at the edge of the stage, her perfect smile now fixed and brittle, as she watched the audience responding to my presentation. My mother sat rigidly in her chair, while my father's expression had shifted from concern to something approaching surprise. Midway through the presentation, I spotted Dr. Matthews giving me a subtle thumbs up. Daniel beamed from his seat, and Catherine Lancaster watched with evident satisfaction, occasionally glancing toward my parents with what looked like vindication. The implications of this protocol extend beyond the initial trial group, I continued, hitting my stride. We are now seeing applications for children with related neurological challenges, expanding our potential impact exponentially. I clicked to a graph showing projected outcomes for different patient populations. What this means, in human terms, is that thousands of children previously given limited prognoses could now have pathways to improved function, greater independence, and significantly enhanced quality of life. As I moved toward my conclusion, I felt none of the anxiety that had plagued me earlier. The words flowed naturally, powered by genuine passion for the work and the children it served. In closing, I want to share one more story. Jacob was 8 when he joined our trial, and his parents had been told he would likely never progress beyond a second-grade academic level or develop age-appropriate social skills. I clicked to the final video, showing a boy of about 10 presenting a science project to his class, explaining confidently as his classmates listened attentively. Jacob is now testing above grade level and was recently elected class representative. When I asked him what he wants to be when he grows up, he said, "A doctor like you, so I can help kids whose brains work differently understand how special they are." The room fell silent for a moment, then erupted into applause. It began at the back and rippled forward, growing in intensity until people began rising to their feet. A standing ovation, not for the polished Harrington charm my sister would have brought to the podium, but for the work itself, presented with authentic passion by the person who had created it. As the applause continued, Catherine Lancaster returned to the podium beside me. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the power of innovative research coupled with genuine compassion. Dr. Harrington treatment protocol is already changing lives, and with your support tonight, we can extend its reach to children across the country. She turned to me with genuine respect in her eyes. Thank you, Dr. Harrington, for your brilliant work and for sharing it with us so eloquently tonight. The fundraising portion of the evening began immediately, with Catherine announcing that an anonymous donor had pledged to match all contributions up to $1 million. The energy in the room was electric, as donation pledges began flowing in, quickly surpassing previous year's totals. As I stepped away from the podium, several donors approached, not to exchange social pleasantries, but to ask substantive questions about the research. A neurosurgeon from a neighboring hospital wanted to discuss potential surgical applications. A philanthropist who funded scientific education programs asked about training opportunities for other practitioners to learn the protocol. These were not people humoring the awkward Harrington daughter. These were professionals engaging with a respected colleague. The distinction was palpable and profoundly validating. Amanda approached, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. That went surprisingly well, Becca. You did not seem nervous at all. Because I was talking about something I know and care deeply about, I replied simply. Well, I am glad I did not have to step in, she said, somehow still positioning herself as the backup plan rather than acknowledging she had attempted to usurp my place. My parents approached next, their expressions a complex mix of surprise, confusion, and belated pride. Rebecca, that was quite impressive, my father said, sounding genuinely amazed. You have clearly come a long way with your presentation skills. My mother nodded, already adjusting to the new reality. Several board members commented on how compelling your speech was. The Wilsons have already pledged $50,000. Their praise felt hollow after years of doubt. Their quick pivot to taking reflected pride uncomfortable after their attempts to sideline me. But before I could respond, Catherine Lancaster returned with an elegantly dressed man I recognized as the head of the Westbrook Foundation, one of the largest medical research funders in the country. Dr. Harrington, may I introduce James Westbrook? He was particularly moved by your presentation and would like to discuss your work further. James extended his hand. Dr. Harrington, the clarity with which you communicated both the science and the human impact was extraordinary. My foundation is looking to fund independent research initiatives like yours, outside traditional institutional constraints. I would love to discuss the possibility of a dedicated grant for your team. My mother's eyes widened at the mention of independent funding, a clear path to research autonomy that would separate me further from the family medical legacy and their control. That sounds fascinating, Mr. Westbrook, I replied, aware of my family hovering, but for once not concerned with their reaction. I would be delighted to discuss it further. As the evening continued, it became clear that a shift had occurred, not just in how others perceived me, but in how I perceived myself. Reporters covering the gala requested interviews with me specifically, not with the Harrington family collectively. Colleagues approached to discuss collaboration opportunities. Even Amanda's circle of socialite friends came to congratulate me directly rather than through her. Near the end of the event, Catherine announced that the evening fundraising had exceeded all expectations, reaching over $6 million, a record for the annual gala. And when she acknowledged those responsible for the success, she called me back to the podium alone, not with my family. Much of tonight's success is due to Dr. Rebecca Harrington, whose groundbreaking work and passionate advocacy have opened new possibilities for children facing neurological challenges. The medical community is fortunate to have researchers of her caliber leading the way forward. As another round of applause filled the ballroom, I caught sight of my family standing together at the edge of the crowd. For once, they were not the center of attention at a medical community event. For once, a Harrington was being celebrated not for social connections or charm, but for the substance of her work alone. The triumph of the evening was not just in the successful presentation or the record fundraising. It was in standing my ground against years of diminishment, in reclaiming my achievement from those who had tried to rewrite the narrative, and in discovering that the voice my family had tried to silence was precisely the one that needed to be heard. The days following the gala brought a whirlwind of activity. My phone buzzed constantly with congratulatory messages, interview requests, and follow-up meetings with donors interested in supporting the research. The Children's Hospital newsletter featured a front-page article about the record-breaking fundraising total, alongside a photo of me at the podium, rather than the standard Harrington family portrait that usually accompanied such events. Most surprising was the media coverage. Several medical journals requested detailed articles about the protocol, while the city newspaper ran a feature titled "Breakthrough Doctor Steps into the Spotlight," highlighting both the research and the unprecedented funding it had garnered at the gala. Not once did any of the coverage mention Amanda, or position me as the shy sister who needed support. I had been seen, finally, on my own terms. My first Monday back at the research lab, the team greeted me with applause and a small celebration. Daniel had brought cupcakes decorated with tiny neuron patterns in icing. To Dr. Harrington, he toasted, raising a paper cup of coffee, who not only revolutionized pediatric neurology, but also proved she could communicate it brilliantly without any family intervention. The easy laughter and genuine pride of my colleagues felt worlds away from the strained dynamics of my family. Here, I was valued for exactly who I was, not constantly measured against an impossible standard of Harrington perfection. The contrast became even clearer when I received a text from my mother, 3 days after the gala. "Your father and I would like to have dinner to discuss your presentation and the opportunities arising from it. Thursday at 7? I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to decline, to protect the newfound confidence I had discovered at the podium. But another part recognized that this conversation was necessary if I was ever to redefine my relationship with my family on healthier terms. Thursday evening found me driving to my parents' house, feeling oddly calm. The mansion where I had grown up, once so intimidating in its perfection, now seemed like a museum of appearances, beautiful but somewhat hollow. My parents and Amanda were already seated in the formal dining room when I arrived. The table was set with the best china, a detail that would once have intimidated me, but now struck me as an unnecessarily formal approach to a family dinner. "Rebecca," my mother greeted me with an air kiss to each cheek. "You look well. Success clearly agrees with you." My father nodded approvingly. "The hospital board cannot stop talking about your presentation. Charles Wilson told me it was the most compelling research overview he had heard in years." The praise felt different than it had in the past, tinged with surprise rather than genuine pride, as if they were still struggling to reconcile the daughter they had always underestimated with the confident researcher who had commanded the gala. Amanda sat quietly, offering a tight smile but little else. The matching emerald dress incident had not been mentioned since the gala, hovering between us like an unacknowledged ghost. "James Westbrook called me yesterday," my father continued as we began the first course. "He mentioned a substantial independent research grant. That is quite an opportunity." The emphasis on independent was subtle but unmistakable. The Harrington medical legacy had always been intertwined with the major hospitals and institutions where my parents held influence. An independent grant would place me outside that sphere of control. "Yes," We are meeting next week to discuss the parameters, I replied. It would allow us to expand the clinical trials significantly. Well, the Harrington name certainly opened that door for you, my mother commented, a hint of her old diminishment creeping in. James and your father were residents together. I set down my fork deliberately. Actually, Mother, Mr. Westbrook, specifically mentioned that he was impressed by the presentation and the protocol itself. He had no idea I was related to Howard Harrington until afterward. A brief, uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Then Amanda spoke for the first time. The matching dress thing was a mistake. I should not have done that. The abrupt change of subject caught me off guard, but her expression seemed genuinely contrite. No, you should not have, I agreed simply. I just always thought. She paused, seemingly struggling with the words. I always thought you needed me, that we were a team where I handled the social part and you handled the smart part. I did not realize I was overshadowing you. It was perhaps the most honest thing Amanda had ever said to me, and I found myself unexpectedly moved by her vulnerability. I did need help sometimes, I acknowledged. But not because I am incapable, just because social situations are harder for me than they are for you. There is a difference between supporting someone and taking over for them. My mother sighed heavily. We were trying to protect you, Rebecca. You have always been so sensitive to criticism, so easily flustered in public settings. Did it ever occur to you that I might have been that way because my family constantly told me I was? I asked, keeping my tone conversational rather than accusatory. When you spend your entire life being told you are socially awkward, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. My father looked uncomfortable, adjusting his tie, as he often did when conversations turned emotional. We may have been overly concerned, he admitted reluctantly. Your performance at the gala demonstrated capabilities we had not fully appreciated. It was as close to an apology as my father had ever come, and I recognized the effort it took him to acknowledge even that small mistake in judgment. The remainder of dinner unfolded with a strange new dynamic. My parents asked substantive questions about my research, rather than focusing on the social aspects of the gala. Amanda was quieter than usual, occasionally catching my eye with what seemed like newfound respect. As we finished dessert, my mother broached the subject that I suspected had been the real purpose of the dinner. The annual Medical Innovation Conference is next month. As a family, we should coordinate our presentations and appearances. I took a deep breath. Actually, I have already been invited to give a keynote on the protocol. I will be attending, but I will be presenting my work independently, not as part of a Harrington family panel. The silence that followed was deafening. Independence from the family brand was unprecedented in the Harrington medical dynasty. I see, my father said finally. That is certainly your choice to make. It was a small concession, but a significant one. For the first time, my professional choices were being acknowledged as my own, not subject to family approval or management. As I drove home that night, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. The family dynamics that had shaped my self-perception for so long were beginning to shift, but the process was uncomfortable and incomplete. Real change would take time, consistent boundaries, and a continued commitment to defining myself on my own terms. The following weeks brought a flurry of developments. The Westbrook grant was approved, providing funding for an expanded trial of my protocol across 3 additional hospitals. Catherine Lancaster invited me to join the Gala planning committee for the following year, a position my mother had held for over a decade. And most significantly, I was asked to establish a specialized treatment center implementing my protocol, with full autonomy over staffing and direction. Amidst these professional advances, I worked on strengthening the relationships that had supported me when my family had not. Audrey and I began meeting weekly, not just as mentor and mentee, but as friends and colleagues. Daniel and I grew closer, our shared passion for the research evolving into something deeper and more personal. And I found myself reaching out to younger researchers in the department, particularly those who seemed intimidated by the spotlight, offering the kind of support I had once needed. rather than the takeover my family had attempted. 6 months after the gala, I found myself in a familiar position, preparing for a major presentation, this time at an international conference. As I practiced in my office, a young postdoctoral fellow named Lily watched nervously. "I could never do that," she said when I finished. "Speaking in front of hundreds of people? I would pass out." I smiled, recognizing my former self in her apprehension. "You know, my family spent years convincing me I was incapable of public speaking. They were so certain I would embarrass myself that they once tried to replace me with my sister at a major event." Lily's eyes widened. "What happened?" "I discovered that when you are speaking about work you are passionate about, from a place of genuine knowledge, the fear does not disappear, but it becomes manageable. The authenticity carries you through." "Did your family ever come around?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. The past 6 months had brought gradual changes in my family dynamics. My parents had slowly begun to acknowledge my capabilities, though old habits of control still emerged occasionally. Amanda and I were establishing a more authentic relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than her constant overshadowing. It was not perfect, but it was progress. "They are learning," I answered honestly. But more importantly, I stopped needing them to validate my worth. I found my own voice, my own community, my own measure of success. As Lily left my office, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The gala that my family had been so certain would be my humiliation had instead become my liberation. Not because I had delivered a flawless presentation, but because I had finally rejected the narrative that had been constructed around me and claimed the right to write my own story. The greatest lesson had not been about public speaking or professional recognition. It had been about the quiet power of authenticity, the freedom that comes from defining yourself rather than accepting others' limitations, and the courage to stand alone at the podium when necessary. Have you ever had someone try to take credit for your hard work or minimize your accomplishments? I would love to hear how you handled it in the comments below. Remember that your voice matters, and your achievements deserve recognition. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. If it resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming family expectations, and share this with someone who might need to be reminded of their own worth. Sometimes our greatest strength emerges when we finally step out of the shadows others have placed us in.